Creations Radio. My name is Henrik Palmgren, coming to you from the west coast of Sweden. Thank you for tuning in to our internet radio broadcast. We are here twice a week on Thursdays and Sundays, and the website you should keep an eye on is redicecreations.com. Today we have an interesting program ahead of us. We are going to follow up on our World War II theme and talk about the rise of Hitler, and we're going to talk about who potentially put him there into power. Our guest is Greg Hallett, and he's the author to the book Hitler Was a British Agent. This is an interesting area that I'm looking forward to exploring further with Greg. The website you should take a look at is greghallett.com for more material on what we'll be talking about here today. So let's say welcome to our guest. Hi Greg, finally, thank you for coming on Red Ice Creations Radio.
G'day, how are you? Greetings from New Zealand.
Yeah, exactly, greetings from New Zealand. We are fine up here in Sweden, and it's excellent to have you on the line. Finally we managed to pull this together here, so to speak. And I'm looking forward to, talking about your book here today, Hitler Was a British Agent. Basically, I'd like to ask you, when you began your research on this book, and I guess also what got you interested in this area to begin with.
I was actually writing some books on the sexual activities and proclivities of New Zealand politicians. And then an intelligence agent came and spoke to me, and I'd written a paragraph on Hitler, and he said, make it a page. And then 2.5 years later, it was a 500-page book.
Really?
So it was this huge distraction from writing about the terrible goings-on of New Zealand politicians.
Ah, okay, interesting. So that this was a tip that you got from a colleague or a friend?
Yeah. Well, I had a lot of surveillance activity on me at the time. I had security intelligence service vehicles in the driveway next door, and I had a police helicopter flying over the house. So an intelligence agent noted this, and he brought 2 copies and a newspaper and became my chauffeur and briefed me as he drove me around Auckland City, and that went on for 2.5 years.
Really? Huh. And
so I sat on the back taking notes.
Really?
Yeah.
So why were you having this surveillance on you? Was this because of the other research you were doing?
Yeah, I'd given a speech in the Cook Islands and exposed the Prime Minister, Helen Clark, as a KGB agent. Mm-hmm. And ever since then I've been hounded by the police and judiciary and virtually blacklisted in my architecture practice.
Really?
And since then it's become very obvious that Prime Minister Helen Clark is a KGB agent, and she was trained in Tavistock, St. Petersburg, and is a graduate of the Freud Hilton. And her training is very similar to Hitler's training, where foreign countries locate disgruntled individuals and take them back to their country and train them as double agents and then advance them to destroy that foreign country. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That was what Britain did with Hitler and destroyed Germany totally, and that's what Russia is doing with Helen Clark. She's absolutely destroying New Zealand and all known vestiges and qualities of the society here. It's almost a repeat pattern 60 years later. History repeats every 60 years, plus or minus 2 years, the same thing that Hitler did to Germany, Helen Clark's doing to New Zealand.
I guess that this also suggests that they have kind of found a formula that works, I guess.
Yeah, it's basically the Tavistock training, and when that officially started up in about, it was actually going on for 500 years, and then it became Tavistock. And the psychological training for the previous 500 years was all gathered and centered in one place, and that's been used and developed ever since. So most of the politicians we look at on TV are actually double agents, not serving the country, and serving some foreign power, and essentially serving the New World Order and the central banks. So the current move is to make politics so corrupt to create a tax revolt, and then the tax won't be paid to the government, it'll be just an increased interest rate paid to the central banks, and that will be part of the one world order.
So you're saying that the people, that's the point here, that they actually should be, so to speak, they should notice that they are corrupt and they should become tired of the politicians?
Oh yeah, but I think the general public is now beginning to realise, whether they're saying it or not, that governments are actually just a mafia operation.
Right.
And if you look back on the last 35 years, what your government has done for your country, in New Zealand's case, it's absolutely nothing. They've just completely eroded everything. And the judiciary in New Zealand is now a complete, utter and total fraud. The police in New Zealand are rapists and paedophiles and murderers, and the rapists, paedophiles and murderers are promoted to the top positions. So we've got 100% corruption happening in the New Zealand government, the New Zealand judiciary, and it's covered up by the New Zealand media. And there's no heterosexuals in the New Zealand media.
All right. Well, yeah, let's...
So it's similar. What's happening in New Zealand, which I've written about in my most recent book, New Zealand, A Blackmailer's Guide, that has direct parallels to what was happening in Germany with the pink swastika.
Tell us about that.
Well, Hitler was well reputed to be homosexual and cover relationships. And he was also a coprophiliac. And a lot of his staff were homosexuals that they all fronted as fierce fascists. And we've got a similar situation in New Zealand where 75% of the current government is not heterosexual. And Prime Minister Helen Clark has introduced the Electoral Finance Bill, which is essentially judicial fascism, where no one is allowed to speak up against anyone in government on penalty of something like 2 years jail without trial and a $10,000 fine. So what we've got, what people overseas in Sweden and everywhere in the Northern Hemisphere, they see New Zealand and they see mountains and rivers and sea and surf and bird life and trees.
Right.
When you live here, it's a mafia operation run by double agents, running it at virtually 100% corruption.
I mean, you mentioned kind of their own, I guess, personal, I would say that their sexual activities or whatnot, to that extent. But are you saying also that this is in some way being used against them then, that they can utilize to, either for blackmail or for just, to carry out the purposes of someone else? Is that what you're saying here?
Yeah. Well, politics now runs on shame. And the most shamed person is advanced to the highest positions. So what happens when someone, let's say Jonathan Hunt, the New Zealand's High Commissioner to Britain, he's a well-known paedophile and international organising pederast. And he's advanced to that position as a paedophile, and what he does is he surrounds himself with other paedophiles and other sexual deviants who won't disclose his pedophilia. So then we've got a situation where right through government from the highest ranks to the lowest ranks, right through the judiciary from the highest to the lowest, right through the police from the highest to the lowest, and right through the media from the highest to lowest, are all pedophile minders who have been nurtured into their positions by either shame or covering for someone else's shame. And it was the same with Hitler.
This is definitely. This is very, very interesting.
We've got a similar situation with the Prime Minister of Denmark. Is it Rasmussen?
Rasmussen, yeah, right.
Yeah. He's constantly being delivered to hospital late at night in a dress. He's a cross-dresser, takes drugs and has sex in parks, and gets